we do have an old rule in here. Anybody who comes for the podcast has to, at the beginning, touch my ball, please.
So I've been having a think about this. You haven't bought me a drink yet. You made me a lovely coffee and a sparkling mineral water, but I'm more than happy to touch your ball.
Thank you. It's just for the vibe. And you see how it just all, it's very, can you feel it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Nice and round too.
Yeah, so it kind of sparkles up the brain power and we'll possibly get some better answers. You have been a solar nerd for nearly how long?
Be getting close to 15 years now. So I started in the industry in 2009, just as I was an A-grade electrician working for myself, and I just decided to get into solar. Kind of happened a little bit accidentally. Like I was just working for someone. I think I might have been putting PowerPoints in for water tanks or something like that, and they knew someone who was looking for electricians to get into solar, and I thought, I really liked the idea. Back then, no one knew anything about it. So all I knew is, solar panels produce power. That's sort of all I knew. So I went and got my CEC accreditation, and it just kind of grew from there from my course. So I did my course, I think it was September 2009, something like that. And at the end of the course, the teacher sort of said, well, if there's anyone looking to do some jobs and get into it straight away, let me know at the end of the course, and we can get some jobs for you if you want. And I put my hand up and said, I'm ready to go. I want to get straight into it. So I did, and that was sort of from there. Never really looked back. Started doing those. Actually, funnily enough, the first systems I did was SunPower.
Did you do them for your own company or you were subcontracting?
No, I was subcontracting. Subcontracting. There was a lot of regional work at that time. I look back at sort of some of the stuff we did back then, and we've come a long way with the standards and guidelines and all those sort of things.
It was really an industry ready to take off because there was the 44-cent feed-in tariff as well as the $8,000 rebate.
Yep.
So, the industry had no chance to fail.
No, that's right. Well, it was, and then there were companies that were doing systems for free. All they had to do was pay for their metering costs. So, $8,000 rebate. In Victoria, we had the 66-cent feed-in tariff as well. So that was, you're right. It was never going to fail.
But about those free systems, I started when the systems were about $3,950 because they were proper SunPower panels and Sharp panels. Yeah. And then somehow somebody worked out you could get out of India or China really cheap gear, and suddenly the $8,000 rebate was buying you all the gear and giving you a profit, and that's when they gave the stuff away for free.
That's right.
But you tell me, what was the quality of that kind of gear?
Well, the gear in particular... it was pretty average, to be honest. It was pretty average. And not just the inverters and panels. The balancer system stuff we had as well. It was pretty bad. Compared to what they're using today, it's just, poles apart.
I remember AeroSharp came on a pallet of, if you'd order 100, they give you 110 because they already expect the 10 of them to be dead at arrival. That was the quality. Yeah, you're right. They used to fail a lot. We used to get a lot of dead on arrivals. So you'd install them and it just would never energize. So sometimes you'd have one for, tomorrow's job in the back, and you'd throw that one on instead and go get another one the next day. It used to happen a lot. If in the early days you were installing SunPower, and then you moved from SunPower into the free gear, which was crappy stuff from everywhere around the world, how did you find your way back into quality? I suppose I've always wanted to be about quality, but there's been some tough times in the industry too. Like around 2014, margins seemed to be really screwed. And it was just a little bit harder to make money. Feed-in tariff had stopped. Yeah, that's right. Those sort of things. Feed-in tariff stopped. STCs, they got rid of the phantom STCs around, it was probably a little bit before that. But you could tell the screws were starting to be tightened a fair bit. Install rates as well. That was probably a big one. Install rates. So we were doing 1 kilowatt systems for $1,200-$1,300, something like that. And, you could smash them out pretty quick. Especially the installation standards were not what they are today. So you could get it done pretty fast. And we'd go through that, and then all of a sudden, the install rates got tightened up. I think, a lot of these sales companies we worked for saw that we were making pretty good money and decided to really turn the screws. And, they wanted to drop their prices, sell more.
And yeah, it just got a lot harder for installers.
So they actually offered you less money, did they?
Yeah, absolutely. There's been a lot of rate cuts, and yeah, I'm probably guilty of that too. I suppose there'd be some people when I was working at other companies where I've been the one that's had to deliver the news that, oh look, market's getting harder, we've got to cut the rates, or there's not going to be any work. Like I've had that conversation a fair bit. So it's been difficult, but yeah, that's just what you got to do, I suppose.
Okay. So you've worked at least for 3 companies that are not around anymore. The Mark Group.
Mark Group, yep.
True Value.
Yep.
Necro, I think.
Nico Solar, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
They were ahead of their time, Nico. They really were. I was doing some work for Nico, some subcontract work, and I really enjoyed the work I was doing for them. There seemed to be more quality gear. They'd treat us better. Everything was organised.
So they were quite positive. So
yep.
Why would a company like that not be around anymore?
Look, I think what happened with them is the insulation debacle which happened in Australia. So they sort of loaded up on insulation. Like bats, pink bats.
Right.
Pink bats.
They got eaten up by that, did they?
Yeah. So that's something they always did. The warehouse that we were at in Mulgrave in Victoria was full to the brim. Like it was a 10 meter high warehouse. I'm not sure how many square meters it was, probably 1,000 square meters, something like that. Half of the warehouse, there's a big net in the center to hold all the insulation because it was stacked up one on top of the other to the roof. But then, you know what happened? They ended up pulling the program. It was thousands and thousands and thousands of bags, and no one wanted it because
now you had to pay proper price again.
That's right. And I think that's the main thing why Nico ended up going bust. They were doing pretty well. It was disappointing. It was a great company to work for.
Very interesting. One of the companies you've worked for was True Value Solar.
Yes.
And at one stage, True Value Solar was offering the cheapest solar in Australia and was the largest company in Australia.
Yep.
And told everybody how large they are.
Did they ever?
How was that?
It was insane, to be honest. The amount of work that was going in and out of that place at that time, I'm guessing 150 installs per day, maybe even a little bit more.
And it's all done on cheap price. How much care can you really give a system like that?
The short answer is not that much. We did have a little bit of a mixed bag, and then trying to do quality control on that. Yeah, you actually can't. Because also there weren't many electricians working in the office too. So there's a lot of salespeople, there's schedulers and people in the warehouse, but the amount of skilled tradespeople in the office, a lot of the time it was just me. Sometimes it was someone else as well. So we would just get bombarded by questions. Our phones would just be ringing constantly. My phone would ring and they'd be like, "Oh, Pat, what's going on? This place, I've got 26 panels loaded onto my trailer and I've been up on the roof, I can only fit 8. What's going on?" And I'm like,
"Fit 8?"
Yeah, 8. This used to happen, 8. And I'm like, "Are you sure? You're at the right house. What's going on?" And you find out the salesperson has sold them 26 panels. So there's a lot of installs, a lot of sales being done sight unseen, right? Happens today still, still happens. That was pretty much the normal back then. You go onto the sales floor and sometimes it was like the Wolf of Wall Street. They're all really happy with each other and they're ringing bells and all this, all that sort of stuff. It was, playing their music and all high-fiving each other, and the people in the operations are just absolutely ripping their hair out going, "What is going on here? Like, we're just left with all this stuff." And you would think that if you keep continually doing that, there'd be some sort of penalty because you're costing the company money. But you sort of speak to some of the senior managers about it, and they'd be like, yeah, we'll speak to them. And they never did because their thinking was, well, these are salespeople, and if we don't want to ruin their confidence because then they can't sell. So it's just you're just having this circular conversation. They were happy to sell rubbish and things that weren't going to fit on roofs. And like I say, the operations people were there to pick up the pieces. So a lot of the time that was a really, really frustrating job. And I learnt a lot. I learnt a lot in that role, and probably, got a few extra layers of skin, I would have thought.
I'm surprised you still got hair. You're sitting in the middle of a reasonable chaotic office where sales is everything.
Yeah.
And then you try to make and stick it all together later in the installation. So when you sold him 26 panels on an 8-panel roof, how do you solve a situation like that?
More often than not, there would be a fallover. So the installation wouldn't happen. And the installer would have to come back, drop the gear off, and they're annoyed. A lot of the time they'd only get paid like $150, something like that. So it's no good if it's 2 hours away as well. So yeah, they would just come back and they don't have work for the day. The warehouse has got to repack all the stuff, allocate it for the next day.
What about the customer?
Yeah, good question. A lot of the time they would get a refund. They would try and negotiate with them and try and resell them a smaller system. That would happen sometimes. So try and change the contract on the day. There was no real sort of protocol. It was sort of let's work each one out one by one. It was a big chunk of our day.
Why did you decide to leave True Value Solar?
The powers that be decided that they're still not making enough money, still need to lean up a bit. So they ended up going back to contractors running the operation, which is what it was before I was there. They ended up going back to that model. So, and then once they decided to bring that crew back, as soon as I suppose they got the chance, they gave me the old heave-ho. So,
were you the kind of guy who says, hang on, let's at least keep a minimum quality standard, and that was really in the way? Or
the quality was one thing, but I felt like I just wanted people to be accountable. That was probably my thing. I'm really, really keen on people being accountable, especially for their mistakes. And I just don't think that boded too well.
So you moved from one of the more solar cowboy kind of companies to then end up at the Clean Energy Council to help with the regulatory framework.
Yeah.
How did you get across that
bridge? So when I ended up going back to True Value Solar in 2016, I could see things declining a fair bit.
Hang on.
Yeah.
Why did you go back?
All right, we'll step back a little bit then. Let's go back to 2014 when I'd sort of got a little bit annoyed after True Value Solar being in management positions, and I had some surgery on my shoulder in 2013, fixed it up, and I was starting to feel good again. So by 2014, I thought I'm a bit sick of this management thing. I was probably a bit stressed out with it all. So I thought, let's go, fall back on my trade a bit. I'm going to try and get a job in service and warranties and just get out there and see people again. And I was lucky enough to get a job with Solargain. So I worked at Solargain for 10 months, I think it was. And yeah, it was a really good company to work for. They had their issues as well. But it was a better environment.
They're a solid operator.
Yeah, they are. They were good. They were good. Probably slightly different business model, I think, to what they've got now. But I felt like it was a good company. It was a lot smaller than what True Value Solar was at the time. I felt a bit more cared for as an employee, and I got out there again, and I was changing inverters, and I was cleaning panels, and I was seeing people's faces being happy. It was good. It was quite good. So
no more ripped off solar customers.
No, it was good. It was good. It was sort of brightened my life up again. So that was nice. But I sort of started to get a bit, bit unsettled again, just with the way some of the operations were happening as well. And I thought, I could just do this better. And a lot of people probably think that, but I thought I could just do this better. And an opportunity from Mark Group came up. So they sort of, I don't know how they found me, but I was sort of headhunted a little bit by Mark Group, and they needed someone to run their office down in the Melbourne office, because there was head office was in Sydney at North Ryde, I think it was. Yeah, North Ryde back then. And they had a satellite office for Melbourne in Tullamarine. So they needed someone to look after the operations there, and I ended up caving in. I wasn't going to do it, and I thought, I'll do it. Let's see how this goes, and I'll have another go at it. And it was funny because probably that was in January. I started there January or December. It was either December 2015 or January 2016. And by, I think it was the 1st of April, they'd been bought out by private equity.
Anchorage Capital
Partners, that's right. Yep. So that happened 2 months after I was there. And that they really shook things up in Mark Group. They shook things up big time. So they were obviously bleeding a lot of cash with the way they were running the business, which I didn't know about when I got there. They painted a pretty nice picture for me to get the job. And then, I sort of saw a few things, and we cleaned a lot of stuff up. But then by the time Anchorage sort of got there, they really sort of tidied things up. And they helped me with my professional development as well. Like I I was worried they were going to see me as like the old crew who were bleeding money because they didn't know anything. They sort of got there and they were like, oh, who is this guy down in Melbourne? But I sort of, I learned a lot off those people, you know, about how to run a lean business, you know, cutting the fat away, all those sort of things. And I think I was, I think they liked me. So yeah, I ended up getting the job there as a national operations manager. I was appointed there probably in May, I think. And yeah, I used to spend probably maybe 3 or 4 days every fortnight up in Sydney, coming and helping with the operations. And it was another interesting part of my journey. So
the Mark Group again is a national company, not a small local company. That tried to kind of put a bit of a cookie cutter approach onto solar.
They did.
How do you find that those cookie cutter large national companies can serve as a solar customer versus a local kind of guy that goes out and does the proper inspection and all that?
Yeah.
Where do you stand with that now?
So I definitely think if you talk about cookie cutters, I think a local cookie cutter guy is like the ultimate. So someone who's got really good process, that's who you want to be with. They're the ones that have been around and they're the ones who've stood the test of time and, you know, are making their margins and able to service their customers moving forward. I don't know, the larger ones, who's done it? I mean, who's a success story? Being a national company that's sort of...
Still around.
Yeah, still around. Who's doing it?
No.
Is there anyone?
Energy Matters died.
Yeah.
Today Solar died. Solar Shop died.
Yeah.
Beyond Building died. Mark Group
Keep
died.
Keep going. Yeah. True Value. Did you say True Value?
No, I haven't said True
Value.
Value
Haven't said True Value yet.
Eurosolar.
Eurosolar, yeah.
And they always advertise on a cheap price.
Yeah.
But then when the warranty comes, 4 or 5 years later, what happens?
Yeah, well, this is the thing, isn't it? There's no one around to help them out. If they are still around, they don't want to know about it.
No, they become very good.
Yeah.
If you haven't had them warranty checked every year on the first by us, sorry, there's no warranty. Sorry, you go to the subcontractor, chase him.
Yeah.
Sorry, we're still the same name, we're still in the same building, but we're different ABN, it's a different company. We got nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
I mean, they play every trick of the book to avoid to look after it afterwards, because if they would have to look after it, they would have to go bankrupt.
Yeah.
Is that what you found too? Or?
Yeah, I've seen it heaps. I've seen it a lot. And it's really disappointing and disheartening for these customers. I mean, you know, on one hand, you sort of say, well, you probably should have done your due diligence a bit better, you know, read up on the forums and all that sort of stuff, because there's that much information out there now.
Some of the worst companies in Australia have 5-star reviews on some of those product review sites.
Well, that's right.
And so the customer can easily be misled.
Yeah, but I suppose what I'm saying is that there's a lot of information out there about doing your due diligence, and there's a lot of horror stories out there. So if I was going to buy solar, like I'd be digging pretty deep and making sure this company has been around for a while. They've got good installers. Anyone who sells on price alone, that's red flags for me. Like, do we buy anything else on price alone? I mean, do you buy your car because it's the cheapest?
No.
You don't, do you?
No.
I mean, I've even stopped buying milk because it's the cheapest. Like, you know, you can buy milk for $1 a litre or whatever like that.
I don't want the farmers to be ripped off.
No, that's right. Well, either do I. So we've started buying milk that's, you know, $3.20 or whatever it is. I don't want to buy it just purely on price. It's, bad move.
I mean, same thing even with caged eggs and stuff. They're cheaper, but I like them to be able to move their wing.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right. So solar on price, you say is a red flag.
Yeah.
What are other red flags?
This is just my personal opinion. I hear a lot of people, especially in sales companies and those sort of things in the industry, always talking about panels and inverters, right? When they're going to buy, they have a look at the panel and they have a look at the inverter, and that's their sort of, and then I suppose the price, and they weigh all those things up. We've got CEC listed products now. Now, they've been around, the CEC lists have been around for a while. I believe they're in a better spot now than they were 10 years ago, and getting better all the time. It's probably harder to get on the list than it used to be. The one thing that is the variable is the installation. So I see a lot of the products, even though they are different and they have different functionalities, I'm not going to say they're all the same because they're not, but they're all listed products. They're all safe, and they're all going to be working. Now, you can have a debate about the performance and all that sort of stuff. That's fine. But if you have a look at a poor installation compared to a good installation, that's, I believe, where you get your value, and that's where you can really fall down. So a lot of these sales companies, we find, use subcontract installation. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, because there's some subbies out there that do a really good job. But what you don't know is if you've got a subbie doing your installation, it could be their first installation. But what are the chances that you're going to get a good install? So if you have someone working for a company that's been working for a company for a while, and they understand the products, they understand the team they're working with, and they care, I think you're probably going to get a better result compared to a subcontractor that's trying to get in and out as quick as they can. Because if they're working for a company who's sold on price, they're likely to be screwed by that company when it gets time to be paid. So, and that's just the reality of what happens. These sales companies that are selling on price, they're trying to make money, right? That's one area where they can sort of try and get their margins up a little bit by screwing the installer. So then the installer is going to be screwing things down too. They're going to try and get in and out as quick as they can. Any of the balance of system parts that they're that they're supplying themselves are going to be poor quality, because it doesn't matter to them if the labels start, peeling off after, a few months, or if, the cable that they use starts deteriorating, or the conduits aren't UV rated.
Or just use a few less clamps. Just have
That's right.
a few less clamps, because it's under the panel. Who'd ever know the difference?
That's right.
Till you have the big storm.
That's right. That's it. That's the thing. So for me, that's the main thing. A lot of people sort of say inverters number one and panels number two. I would say installation number one, and then probably panel. You probably debate panels and invert it. After that, for me, that's nowhere near as important, because the variable is the installation.
Just going back to True Value, which was one of the largest companies on cheap solar in Australia, and you decided to work for them twice.
I did. I went back. How bad's that? I went back. I didn't get back a third time. I went back though.
How was it second time around? Was it still chaotic? Was there still just about the price and not so much about the install?
Contractors that I'd spoken about earlier, they then left again. Called me up, said, I sort of need your help. Would you come back? And I'm like, oh, you're kidding me. Kicked me to the curb. And you're asking me to come back? Are you serious? Anyway, so I decided, all right, I'll do it. I'll come back. And it was when I came back there in the start of 2016, there was certainly less fun in the office. It wasn't like, I mentioned Wolf of Wall Street earlier. There was less of that sort of stuff. You could tell they kind of knew they were in a bit of a dead end job, and it was just sort of going through the motions a bit more. They were always having this battle with, Eurosolar to be, I suppose, the cheapest, and they're always looking at how much to, how many megawatts have they sold this month, and then they try and work out how much Eurosolar would have done, and it was just this.
So this, for our listeners and viewers, these were the two big mass cheap solar companies in a battle to the bottom with each other. And there was nothing left to cut out of the chain.
No. I reckon they were doing maybe 15 a day.
Wow.
Maybe 20.
From 105 going down to that.
Yeah. So larger jobs, but nowhere near the volume.
So the cheap solar guy got beaten by somebody who decided to do it even cheaper.
Yep. And then they're both gone now.
What's happened to all the customers of those systems?
So last time I heard, they've got an email address for warranties, I think. I have heard there's one person who is managing that inbox. And I think, trying to do their best with the warranties where they can. I'm not sure exactly what that means, but I can guarantee you, if you've got a system that is now not working, you're going to have to pay something out of your own pocket to get that back up and running again. So warranty support is not there.
But look, I hear that a lot of the 1.5 kilowatts, at least from the early days, the gear and the quality of what's on the roof now for 10 years, even if you have a 25-year warranty on performance, nobody's going to touch it.
Nah, not now. As funny, actually, story about that. So I remember back in the day, they used to sell the upgradable system. Do you remember that?
Yes.
The upgradable system. So they would install a 5 kilowatt inverter with 8 panels of like 190s. I think what they failed to see was that the Australian standards changed so much that it was never upgradable, because you were never able to add panels onto that, because those new inverters never met the standard a year or two down the track, because the product standards kept changing.
Plus the wattage panels changed too.
Well, that's the other thing. That's right. The wattage of the panels changed. So they were never upgradable. So I'm sure there's a whole heap of them still out there. Not working, 8 panels on a 5 kilowatt inverter.
Not very efficient.
No, definitely not. No, well, see, that was the thing. They didn't think about that. They were just thinking, we can sell this upgradable. Yeah, just buy the bigger inverter now. We'll make more margin on it. But, we'll only give you 8 panels, and you can think about it later on the track. And I know a lot of the installers felt bad in the stomach doing it, but they just did it because that's what the work was there.
5-6 years of working for some of the cheapest price-focused companies.
Yep.
What's your advice to end customers when buying a solar system?
Just don't buy it on price. I've seen it so many times. It can't be the main factor when you're going to buy. You've got to look at the installation. You've got to look at the installation quality of the installers who are actually going to be there doing the system. You don't want the installer to be there and putting their feet through the plaster and all that sort of stuff, and tromping on your roses and all that sort of stuff. You want someone. I mean, I'd prefer to get someone with an in-house crew. I think that's the way to go. Someone with an in-house crew who's going to have a company that's going to be having healthy margins, that can be there to support you when or if things go wrong.
What about a company who's 300 kilometers away but $1,000 cheaper? I mean, why would I not use them?
Yeah.
Is that affecting the after sales?
Well, you got to wonder who's going to be there. Who's going to be there when things go wrong? Are they just going to get someone they can just type in solar installer in that area in Google, and they're going to call them up and say, "Can you do a service call for me?" And they're not going to know these people. Local, I would always say, go local. You need to have a local presence. Without a local presence, if they don't have a local presence, you want to stay away from them.
Now, I would argue that the local presence is becoming even more important as to where we're going now, because in the olden days, you bought a solar system, you get a bit of a cheap electricity bill, that's it. But now with the whole climate debate, we're now talking about electrifying the house.
Yep.
So whoever you start your solar with, you're likely to go into many other products with them.
Yep.
Have you seen a change in the whole industry and the perspective?
Oh, definitely. There's been a huge change now. Even a shift in my thinking as well. I never realised until probably 12 months ago how important things like heat pumps were for hot water and getting rid of gas. Stupidly, I always sort of thought, oh yeah, gas isn't too bad. It's a bit cheaper and it's not as bad for the environment and all that sort of stuff. And at least it's, we're not burning coal and all this. I didn't realise how bad it was, to be honest. So that's bad on me. But now I'm totally converted. And I can see the people that I do inspections for they're always talking about heat pumps, and they're talking about how to harvest as much solar as they can to heat up their heat pumps and reverse cycle air conditioning rather than gas heaters. Yeah. There's so many people. I mean, I'm only seeing it really in Melbourne. So many people electrifying their whole house now and getting rid of their gas. It's great to see. Really great to see. I think there's a bit of an education piece that's sort of happened from the industry, and it's starting to really get through.
What about the philosophy nowadays that by the time you throw the EV in, your heat pump, your reverse air conditioning, and your normal consumption, you actually possibly haven't got a big enough roof? Is that starting to become a problem?
Well, I'm about to go through this now myself, actually, because I'm about to build a house myself, and we're not getting a gas connection. 20-25 kilowatt system may not be enough. I don't know. I don't want a power bill. So I think roof space could potentially be an issue moving forward. I think just to get you obviously want to get as much on as you can.
But wouldn't it go even one step further backwards, where the architects who design the houses of the future have to have solar in mind when they develop the roof, and not those higgledy-pickledy 50 gables and 22 antenna roofs? I mean, wouldn't it really be starting with that? Yeah,
you'd think so. I feel like builders are a little bit behind still with where solar, with where solar is and where it needs to be, I feel like it's still a little bit of an afterthought for them, and they don't see the benefits in it. And they just sort of maybe they're looking just at a cheap 6.6 system for a new house. I mean, we've designed our house to maximize sort of as much as we can. We're trying to make the roof so we can get as many panels on it.
Now, after you worked for some of the cheaper solar companies, you somehow transitioned to work for the Clean Energy Council.
Ooh.
The Clean Energy Council is a bit like, from an installer perspective, a bit like a big bunker. we never really get an idea what's going on there.
Yeah.
And we actually sometimes feel that maybe the small installer is really not the key audience there. It's the big energy companies that really are on the board and play the tune and all that.
For sure.
I don't want to get you into trouble, but
No.
what can you tell us out of your CC days?
For sure. That's a good question. I think it's probably not really spoken about all that much. So I think what a lot of people don't realise about the Clean Energy Council, or they don't listen, because I think I've said this before, but a lot of people just don't. They only listen to what they want to. But the Clean Energy Council is effectively sort of split up into different departments. So you've got your sort of policy and advocacy staff who are mainly looking at the larger companies, large-scale solar, wind, all those type of things. Then you've got your accreditation and compliance, and they're looking after the small scale. So this is the stuff we're sort of talking about. Smaller companies, installers, and they run the accreditation program at the moment. Then on top of that, off to the side as well, is, well, when I was there, it was the Approved Solar Retailer program, and now that's transitioned into the Net CC, which the CEC are the administrators of that too. So you've got 3 different parts of this organisation. And I think what a lot of people don't realise is sometimes they're all sort of fighting for the same space. So there's a lot of things that happen internally at the CC where, everyone tries to be on the same page with the way they do things, but they're sort of butting heads a little bit too.
I mean, the installers and the regulation of solar systems, I would argue to you that after 10 years and 12 years of still installing at least 20% of what's getting installed today in Australia is going to be crap. And you've got an organisation controlling that. And they've been doing it for a decade plus. And we've heard over and over poor results, company phoenixing, some gear being brought in that's crap. They're in charge. And they're trying to control it. But the smart asses who know how to make money are always outwitting them at the end.
Yeah, it does seem, that's for sure. That does seem to happen. And I think also you do hear a lot about those type of stories. Like they're probably the ones that do control the narrative a little bit.
So you're saying it's not as often as what you hear about?
I'm not sure if it's not as often as what you hear about, but I think you don't hear the good stories too, because there are a lot of them. There's a lot of installers in the country, and a lot of them are doing the right thing. There's a lot of companies that are selling ethically as well. And I think it's the main ones, that are doing the wrong thing, which sort of make all the noise. So that's what I think. So there's certainly room for improvement, but I think what a lot of people don't realise about the Clean Energy Council is they're funded by the industry. So a lot of people think they're a government department and they're funded by the government, but they're not.
No, they got financial necessities to make their money.
That's right. Yeah.
And some people say that's why they invented the energy retailer program, because it's just a good way to make extra money out of installers.
Yeah. Well,
what are the benefits of it?
When
some companies who are the crookest of crook have gotten being able to be now getting the recommendation. So the clean energy badge actually helps the crooks to look good.
I know it does. Look, I have seen that, and you're right. That's them sort of getting around the system. Look, it's not a perfect system. I think that's probably the answer. It's not a perfect system. From working there, I know myself, they are doing what they can with what they've got and with what powers they've got. So because they're not a government department or they're not a regulator or anything like that, like they can't send people to jail for not following their rules or anything like that. But we've heard recently there's been some action where some installers have been pulled up for fraudulent activity. I think someone's recently just got in some trouble for being in another country and signing off installs, something like that.
And you know what they got? Slap on the wrist, a good behaviour bond for stealing $60,000 out of the rebate scheme.
Yeah,
that's what they got.
Yeah, that's right. Look, Yeah. And that's a clean energy regulator. So I suppose that CEC can do even less than that. Like they don't have the power to do that. So yeah, look, it's because it's funded and run by the industry, there's only certain amount they can do.
And look, they have the financial necessities to make income streams, so I get it.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, I wouldn't want Kane Thornton's job because the people who always will know better will be 50 more than the ones who'll be actually give him good advice. So that is the problem there. Nevertheless, I just look at the end result. And the end result is that we're supposed to save the world.
Yeah.
And we've brought millions of panels into Australia. And we still haven't actually had the CEC drive very hard a recycling program.
Yeah.
Things like that, I see as a failure.
Yeah.
If you're the leader of the industry, if you're representing the industry, if you're taking money out of the industry, if you're doing a clean energy product, and then your stuff goes into majority into landfill because you actually have actively encouraged the recycling industry, after 10, 15 years, that's a failure.
I can see why. Look, I must say, I never really got into for that, advocating for the product stewardship and recycling and all that sort of stuff. I know there was some work happening, but yeah, I'm not really sure how much it was pushed or what sort of results they got. I know there's been some stuff happening in the industry sort of recently. I don't know if that's pushed by the CEC though. I think maybe the Smart Energy Council have done some things.
I think the scandal of these panels in 10 years' time, millions of them have to be found a home.
Yeah.
And all the aluminium, all the glass, that's actually very good material.
Yeah.
For it to not be clear, I think that's really, what do I call it, an oversight, and oversight is a nice word, of this industry. I mean, when I was working for a manufacturer, if you guys would have come to me and asked for an escrow scheme where I have to pay $2 per panel to later on guarantee that those panels would be recycled, we would have loved that because it would have been a perfect marketing opportunity of how clean and green we are.
Yeah, I think that's the answer, isn't it? A levy? Is that what you're saying?
I think it needs to be coming, and the federal government should be kicking it along.
Federal government. I think the federal government are the ones that probably would need to step in with that. Like I try not to get into politics too much with that sort of stuff, but that does seem to be the obvious thing. Because there's been we've had a few pretty big booms in this industry, and you got to think of when the first main sort of commercial boom that I can remember was about in 2017, 2018, a whole heap of 100 kilowatt systems were going on commercial roofs. Just heaps and heaps. They were just going everywhere. A lot of them were done by cheap sales companies. They're going to I don't know. Some of them are probably already at their end of life by now already. So that's a worry. And the problems, unless it gets sorted out, it's going to get much worse. I agree.
But what was actually your role at the CEC?
So I started there as a technical and compliance specialist. When I started there, it was pretty much answering the phone when the installers would call up and wanting some help, go through standards and guidelines and just, general assistance.
So what, somebody wouldn't know the rules and they would double check?
Or maybe single check. Maybe they just didn't know the rules at all. It used to happen a lot. It used to be the same people ringing all day. You used to get people that would call every day. We would do other things like installer nights, webinars. I used to love doing webinars. They were great fun. A lot of people who've heard me on webinars probably sick of hearing my voice because we used to do a lot of them. We used to do them, every sort of 6 to 8 weeks about the standards and guidelines. And
so they were like a training form, really.
Yeah. Well, they do it for continuous professional development as well. I think they were worth maybe 50 points back then. It was probably a 1 hour webinar where people would log in and we would go through a technical presentation, have a bit of banter usually between the presenters. We try to make it, engaging and funny where we could, have some poor jokes as well. And then, we'd open it up for questions and people used to type their questions in and we'd read them out and answer them. It was really good way of doing it. And they sort of stopped that in about 2019, 2020. It sort of got to the stage in 2018. I'd been there just over a year and my boss at the time, he decided to move on. So all of a sudden there's this big hole left in the technical team. So I ended up with the technical team leader job. I did that role for, 18 months, 2 years, something
so
like that. So
what was it, 2018-19, when you're leading the CEC's technical team? What are the key challenges?
Look, a lot of the challenges we found were to do with Australian standards. They kept changing. So if we look at your general electrical stuff like AS3000, we normally have a rule change, every 10 years or so. So in the solar industry, it's usually every year, sometimes multiple per year. That makes it really hard for the installers, and it also made it hard for us to get the message out about doing the right thing, because there's so much to be over in the solar industry as an installer to get it right. A lot of people, might think solar installer, they just sort of rock up on a Monday morning with their chocolate milk and sausage roll, whatever, and they just throw panels on the roof, and then they're at the, in the beer garden by 3 p.m. on a Friday, knocking down schooners. But it's there's more to it. You've got to actually be pretty switched on to be a solar installer. You need to know your stuff. You need to know your standards. You need to know how to run a good team. And getting that across to people who've come across from just being normal, general sort of light and power sparkies, it's a big step up. It's a really big step up. So we were trying to make that transition, I suppose, for them a bit easier, trying to educate them as much as we can, and then keep re-educating, because they kept changing. Doing that in a smooth manner was a bit of a challenge, I would say.
So why the hell in Australia do the Australian standard change all the time when it comes to solar?
Each time they have changed, there's been improvements. You can debate whether the rooftop isolator, when that came in 2010, was an improvement or not.
It's the highest source of fires on the
solar
roofs.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. But so we looked into this a lot, because we used to actually get the blame for the rooftop isolators at the CEC. People would call us up going, why have we still got rooftop isolators? No other country in the world's got them. As far as the fires in isolators went, it was 51% to 49%. I'm pretty sure it was close. So the rooftop compared to the inverter adjacent isolator, the fires were, don't quote me 100%, but it doesn't really matter because it's so close it doesn't matter. There was 51% of fires were from the inverter isolator and 49% were on the roof. I suppose the thinking is that if there's a fire on your roof, it's less likely to cause more destruction because there's not as much fuel on a roof. You might burn the side of a panel. The isolator might turn into a big, blob of plastic. But generally speaking, there's not many things that can catch fire. But you're talking about an inverter isolator on the wall, especially if it's on a weatherboard wall, that can have catastrophic consequences. Yeah. So they're the ones that were sort of. It seems like the standards committee were the ones that they wanted to get rid of. As far as the rooftop, we would sort of see the issues we would see with rooftop isolators would, generally speaking, were product issues, workmanship issues. The amount of sometimes you see like a rattle gun on a isolator. You should be really doing them up with a screwdriver. So you just make sure they're hand tight. That, generally speaking, I think was the reason why we were getting those issues with the rooftop isolators. So the idea, I think, is not as bad as what everyone says. A lot of people say, you put DC on a roof out in the weather, of course it's going to catch fire. But if you do it the right way, you do it safely, you use a good product, I think you can still have a safe outcome. But I think the advent of disconnection points has been a really good thing too. Getting rid of the isolator on the roof, it's been good.
So you worked for the CC. You kind of try to help installers to increase their skill level.
Yep.
And now you've moved into the inspection of solar systems.
Yeah, that's right.
So really, you will see the sins of the fathers, meaning the good and bad stuff from 10 years ago is staring you right in the face.
Yeah, so look, not as much of that is staring me in the face. So I'm generally speaking seeing newer installs.
Right.
So when I do CER audits and Solar Vic audits as well. So CER audits can be done up to 24 months after the installation. So that's probably about as old as I'll see in that program. But there's been other programs I've worked in where there's been where we've looked at old systems and done like condition reports on them and seen some things. Yeah, I worked on a program where they were looking at old systems from the solar schools back in, I think it started in 2008 maybe, something like that. And we were doing sort of condition reports on them, making sure that they were still up to standard, products were okay, they were safe and running and that sort of stuff. And some of that was a bit of an eye-opener.
what are the things that when cheap systems were built,
Yep.
people could stuff up? Just rattle it down. What can you do wrong with the solar system?
So yeah, there was like a lot of things like top entry into isolators was a big thing.
So the water can run straight into the fuse and the switch type.
Yeah, into your DC isolator,
Yes.
correct. You can go straight in. Yeah, cables not ran through ceilings correctly, so they were just, not in conduit. And yeah, poor balance of system things. Like, labeling is, some of the labels from back then, you can't even tell. You can't even read them now. Been out in the sun or in the weather. And yeah, for me, labeling is a pretty big thing.
So if I don't install the panel correctly and screw it in the right spots,
Yep.
and I get a really big windstorm,
Yep.
what can happen?
Worst case, you can end up with the panel flying off the roof. That's your worst case scenario, and that can obviously end up in disaster. But yeah, you can damage the product. And I suppose if you're going to go and get a warranty on that product, I doubt your manufacturer is going to pay out on a warranty when it's been installed like that. Is that right?
No, you wouldn't get
There's no way. You wouldn't get it, would you?
You wouldn't get your money back.
No.
If the installation is done poorly,
Yeah.
even if I give you a 25-year warranty, your warranty just walked out the door.
Yeah.
And it's the installer that's responsible for it and the customer who pays the price.
Yeah.
Is it a good idea to inspect every solar system that's been installed?
Well, I think it is, especially with what I see. Other things you hear about in other states that don't have mandatory inspections, I think I actually can't believe that other states don't have it, to be honest. Like New South Wales, I would have thought would have taken the lead of Victoria. They seem to do that a lot with things like this. Maybe they see what Victoria do first and jump on afterwards. You can see it with the safety, working at heights and those type of things. I suppose when SolarVic came out, they were really big on working safely, working at heights, and they brought in things like mandatory edge protection for installers. And then, sort of New South Wales, Work Safety New South Wales. I think that's what they're called. They decided to interpret the rules the same way as Victorians, and then you see a shift in the way installers are working in New South Wales, and it started to filter into other states as well. So I mean, I would like to see it happen in New South Wales. Some of the stuff you see, some of the installations in and around Sydney, I think, leaves a lot to be desired. And I see some of them sometimes, just whether it's people I work with or send me photos, from around Sydney, or even stuff you see online. I think that the installation quality could be improved a fair bit by mandatory inspections in New South Wales.
So tell us, you are on the roof. What do you see? What are the horror stories? What's one of the worst you've ever seen?
The ones I've seen were panel on the roof, no end clamps. So just no end clamps. I got up there, I'm looking at it going, something's not right here. What is it? For a minute I couldn't pinpoint. And then I'm like, oh, what am I doing? There's no end clamps. So, and I just put my hand under the panel and it was just sort of flapping around. There's been other ones where you've seen really poor connections. Look, not just on the roof, but at the switchboard or in the AC isolator. And there's been burning of the conductor, melting, and things look really, really poor in a way that I sort of felt happy that I was there because I felt like I saved it from catching fire. Like the conductors, you isolate it and the conductor's still warm, those type of things. And these people, they were elderly people and they had no idea. They're just like, oh, we think it's working, we're not sure. And I've gone to open up the isolator and I've gone, something's not right here. I could just tell something was wrong. There's a big crack in the side of the isolator and it wouldn't switch properly. And I'm going, what's going on here? Open it up. There's conductors burnt. And it was a disaster waiting to happen. So that's another one. And I've had other ones where the neutral conductor inside the switchboard was not tight and burnt out. So another almost disaster. So you don't see, like if I hadn't been there to inspect these systems, they would never have known until probably it was too late.
Do you sometimes go to places where people have a solar system, but it hasn't been working for years and they haven't even realized?
Yeah, we had that a little bit with the schools. Yeah, they show you where it was and they're like, oh, I've had this red light flashing for about the last 5 years. So we know it's working well. I'm thinking, okay.
A red light says it's not working.
That's right. So there's that. Definitely get that. There was another one where I'm pretty sure was never turned on. So, I mean, I can't be sure it had never been turned on. Pretty sure it was never turned on though. Yeah, because I knew the rooftop isolator was in the off position, and they said, "Well, we've never had any difference to our bill. We've never had anything any different. It's just gone up and up and up and up and up." So,
was it a house or was it a
no,
school?
that was a school.
I do have a question. Why do you think New South Wales doesn't have same standard of safety inspection?
I've looked into this actually. I've looked into this. So, I've softly been trying to sort of advocate for it. So I think that it's something that needs to happen. I've reached out to a few people who work at the New South Wales government jobs. I'm not going to mention who they are.
No.
And I've said, Solar Vic program has seen unsafe installations drop. I'm not sure exactly what the numbers were. I think it's something like 2.7% of installations are unsafe, and it's now below 1% in Victoria. Now, New South Wales, I'm not sure what the numbers are. I don't know if you capture this data, because this is the thing. They don't capture the data because they don't do the inspections. But obviously there's a lot of systems out there that are getting through, and they don't have the resources there's a whole government department. I mean, I know Solar Vic are part of DELP in Victoria, but there's a whole government department that's dedicated to solar installations in Victoria. So, they're interested in it. It doesn't seem to be that same appetite in New South Wales for safety. And I've asked about it, saying, surely you'd have a look at what's happening in Victoria, the good results that we're seeing. And I can understand why you don't have mandatory inspections. It's something you're looking at. If you're not doing it, why aren't you doing it? Is it a funding thing? Is it a lack of appetite? What is it? And the answer I kind of got was, well, we've been looking at other things. So we're interested in trying to get unlicensed people from doing installations. I'm not sure if they mentioned solar installations or not, but electricians being unlicensed. So rather than doing inspections and audits post-install, we're trying to go out when they're installing things and catch them without their license. I said, great. I'm like, great too.
Yeah, because you can whack good fees and fines on them and you make money.
You make money, yeah. So, but I was like, well, yeah, okay, that's good. That's a good step forward. That's fine. But, I asked you a question about, look at what's happening in Victoria and look at the results we're getting. And, let's not wait until something bad happens to do something. I understand there's been something, I think they may have mentioned that there's been a change in government in New South Wales in the last 6-12 months, is that?
Yeah, correct.
Something like that,
yeah.
That was mentioned that, it's probably a time where that's not going to happen. There's not really an appetite for it at the moment. But, I don't think the appetite is there. Now, I know you've got there's inspections done by Ausgrid, I think. I think Ausgrid do a lot of inspections. And then the other two DNSPs, maybe not so much, was Endeavour and Essential. I think maybe they have some inspections, not really sure.
I think there's spot inspections and also the CER is doing them afterwards.
That's right. So the CER are doing them, that's right. They're doing them, the CER are doing them everywhere, and that's the same in Victoria too. But you just don't, so in Victoria, you've got every installation gets inspected at least once. It needs to be signed off. Then you got Solar Vic on top of that are doing 5%. Then you got the CER on top of that are doing 5%. Then you may also get an ESV inspection, which may not be as extensive because they may not have solar people doing those. They may just be electricians. But you can get caught from so many different angles in Victoria, but seems like in New South Wales and a few of the other states, you can kind of do what you like.
Look, I don't want to get into all the politics of New South Wales, etc. But you're right. There's a new government right now. They just putting their training wheels on. They're not going to go do anything that's rocking the boat at the moment. And I think in most cases, till we have a fire on somebody's roof, it's not gonna happen. And suddenly, then we have knee-jerk reactions all the way the other way.
Of course,
that's usually when politicians get involved. But when you worked in what you described as the Wolf of Wall Street sales environment in a cheap solar company, what were the kind of hooks that they got customers to stick to? Was it just the cheap price, or come on, spill the beans?
Oh, look, I know I'm I mean, I'm not really into sales that much. So what I did know was, so I used to work late there on a Thursday just because it worked out. It was my working arrangement. I think I'd come in late, drop my kids at school, that sort of stuff. And then I'd work late on a Thursday night. So the last Thursday of the month, I'd always think, oh, I'm going to be in for it tonight, because they'd be, there was always a lot of sales on that last Thursday of the month. And I kept thinking, what is it? Why are they so rowdy tonight? You know, there was pizza, there was music, you know, there may have been a few beverages being thrown around, all that sort of stuff. What's going on here? And I asked around, and I'm like, why are you guys so rowdy tonight? And they're like, well, because tonight's the night. Like, this is when we make hay. I'm like, okay. Why? What are you doing? And pretty much the answer was, well, we've basically been told to get our sales targets up, so we drop our pants on the price. So that was pretty much what it was. They'd go be speaking to this customer for 2 to 3 weeks, whatever it was. Come the end of the month, crunch time, sales numbers need to be in. All right. I know we said we wouldn't do it for $600 cheaper or whatever. We're going to do it. We're going to do it. So I don't know if that's what you're looking for exactly. With the, like, I didn't really get too exposed to like high pressure tactics. I wasn't really too exposed to that. I was a little bit on the other end though. So not necessarily with the sales side of things, but on the operations side, there was sort of a time where, let's say an installation was about to happen, and then for some reason there was a problem on site, an unforeseen issue with the installer. So the installer gets out there and goes, well, you know, I'm only going to get, you know, whatever it is, $1,200 for this install, this 6.6. I'm only going to get $1,200 for this. So they'd look at it and go, well, this isn't a standard install, so I need more money. So they'd call me up and they'd go, all right, well, we need an extra $200 for a long cable run here. I'd be like, all right. I'm like, I can't just authorize this, you know. So we need to work out what to do. So they'd actually have someone employed as install support, and they would be that liaison between the customer and Trouvé Solar to work out what to do. And what they basically would do is say, look, the installers come back and said, there's a cable run that we didn't, you know, was an unforeseen thing, and you now need to pay another $300. Now, bear in mind, the installer's only getting $200. Okay, so it's not a cost. And the customer would then say, well, hang on, this is not what you said. You know, and they'd go a bit of argy-bargy and this and that, and then they'd end up saying, all right, fine, we'll do it for $250. Okay, so they do it for $250, and they'd be like, the customer would still be like, well, this is not what I agreed to. I don't want to, I'm going to cancel. I'm not happy with this. And then there were things said like, well, that's okay. If you want to cancel, that's fine. That's up to you. That's in your right. But you'll lose an admin fee. And, you know, the guys have been out on site, so, you know, you'll have to pay for their time too. And
we got already your deposit.
Got your deposit. You can't, you know, fine, we'll give you a refund, but, you know, we'll be deducting the admin fee. I think the admin fee, like sort of before I left, I think it was around $500.
Decent admin.
Decent admin fee. So they're covering costs. And obviously the stuff I mentioned before about how the operations team were the ones having to clean up this mess. Maybe they'd learnt that lesson thinking, well, we need to get more out of the customer to recover that cost because they'd lost so much money. So look, not necessarily a sales tactic to close the sale, but it's backing the customer into a corner to the point where, you know, most of the time they'd go, well, all right, just do it. I'll pay the extra money. It's not worth it for me. Just do it. So,
did you ever have anybody rock up at the office really angry because crap happened and they actually turn up in the place?
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah, there's a couple of times.
This is gold.
Yeah, there's a couple of times that happened.
Yeah, come on.
Oh, look, my memory on it is a little bit sketchy, but I know that we were told at the time, like, not to go down to reception because this person was very upset, very angry. And they would, you know, we had the fob key with the security passes to get into the doors of the office and all that sort of stuff. And they were sort of standing there waiting for someone to open the door They had no idea where to go. You know, a lot of our offices are like rabbit warrens, and True Bay Solar was like that. They had no idea where to go, but they knew they had to get behind that burst door. So we were sort of told, we almost went into lockdown. This customer is out there. This one in particular was, they wanted their deposit back, and yeah, they weren't willing to give it. There was another one I can remember where it was, they had an install from 12 months ago, something like that. And yeah, it wasn't working, and there was issues with warranties. So they were like, beating on the door, and just imagine, whatever you're imagining is probably exactly what happened. Probably exactly what happened. I mean, those type of things used to happen a little bit even at the CEC as well, like installers being upset, hearing it downstairs. I got threatened a few times working at the CEC. I got physically threatened once at an installer event by an installer who,
wasn't happy with the determination.
No, it wasn't that. They just weren't happy with the CEC in general. And they were very vocal. There was someone who'd been very vocal online. I'd sort of probably, because I used to be online a bit and try and stick up for the CEC where I could, because that was, I used to see exactly what was going on. So I thought they needed a voice. And, I'd sort of try and say what I thought is exactly what's happening, not what people are thinking is happening. And this person and I used to clash heads a fair bit. And I ran into him at an event once, and physically threatened me. It wasn't a great experience.
No, look, I mean, I condemn that kind of thing, because to be very honest, I think without the CC, it would be solar cowboy country even more. Yeah. And I have to admit that they have tried over the years to make installation safer. Yeah. Unfortunately, like with any big systems, 1 million systems installed in a couple of years, things can fall through the cracks. Yeah,
I think that certainly is what happened. Like, there's certainly some installers that were, that had been given demerit points and had compliance action taken against them and still had their accreditation. And I just wondered how they were still on the list. But again, the CC can only do so much. And they've also got to have a fair and reasonable process as well. So they can't be seen to be, favouring anyone or having it in for anyone or anything like that. So they've got to be as reasonable as they can, because these things can end up in court.
Solar from 10, 15 years ago to now, what's changed?
Clearly, the products have changed. The products are better than they used to be. So the lists, I think, the CEC lists are tighter and more stringent than they used to be. Installation quality on a general scale is better. Like, I think now even some of the ones that may have been doing a really poor job back then are doing a better job now. Or I suppose what I'm trying to say is the lowest common denominator is slightly higher. I even look at some of the installation quality of some of the work I did back in 2009, and I cringe a bit, to be honest. We didn't know any better. I would say the installation is a big part of the changes and what's got better. So I think it's definitely got better, and it's the products and the installation which have got better.
Now, how important is after sales service?
Yeah, after sales service. So I'll generally only want to work for the companies that provide good after sales service. If you don't have that, you're going to end up with poor reviews, unhappy customers. It's sort of part of the package, isn't it? I would have thought it's part of being a quality company. If you don't have that after sales service, you can't really call yourself a good company.
But there's no moving part in solar. What can go wrong?
You hear that a fair bit, don't you? Some of the stuff you see for older systems, build up of lichen or moss or silicon starting to come away from the panels. They definitely need to be maintained.
What about the leaves under the panels and things like that?
So it's flora and fauna. That's a term we use in as an electrician, an electrical inspector. It can be pigeons. You see a lot of pigeons under panels. I see that a fair bit. Leaves build up.
What
Yeah.
about just, do you have seen broken tiles and people ignored them and it's gone all moldy under the roof and stuff?
Yeah, see that a fair bit. Like not just broken tiles either. Like, so when tiles aren't ground out properly and the water can end up ingressing into the roof cavity when the tiles haven't been ground properly. Certainly see cracked tiles as well. If it's under the panels, it's pretty hard to diagnose too. Like unless you actually get up in there and have a look, hard to see from on top of the roof. You can only really see it from underneath. So yeah, it can definitely become an issue.
You being a solar panel and solar system installer and inspector,
Yep.
you get onto a job. Can you smell pretty quickly what the quality's like?
Yeah, you can. You can tell straight away. Like, so usually the first thing I'll do once I've greeted the customer or the homeowner, whoever it is, usually I'll go over to the switchboard and I'll be looking for the PV site information label. And you can usually tell the good installers do that really, really well. And the top-notch installers seem to not just have the PV site information label laminated and all nice and clear with all the information. They'll also do things like have a QR code in the corner, which not just shows an electronic copy of that document, but it also directs you to a drive which has got all of the installation documents. So all the things that need to be handed over as part of what's in the standards for the customer. So you're talking installation warranty manuals, what to do in the case of an earth fault alarm. Maintenance, I mentioned that. All of the product information, single line diagrams. So I think there's about 15 items. So yeah, they're all on there. So that's when I see that and I see the QR code.
That's the gold standard.
Yeah. Usually I'm thinking, okay, this is probably going to be pretty good install. Pretty good install. So I usually see that. But yeah, a lot of the time the proof is in the pudding on the roof. So you can still have like installers who run crews. They might just send their TAs to do all the roof work, and then
what is the TA?
Trade assistant.
Right.
Yeah, trade assistants. So an unqualified person to do all the roof work, and then the electrician does all the stuff on the ground. So you can find all the stuff on the ground can look pretty neat sometimes, and have good workmanship in it. And then you get on the roof, and it's like a bomb's hit it. So you're seeing other things like only one screw being used to fix the tile brackets into the roof. That's one I always look at. Installers, I don't know. It's like they try and get one over me sometimes, but they only want to put one screw in. You have to put two, but they only want to put one screw in. So what sometimes they'll do is they'll put two screws on all of the outer brackets because they know I'm going to check them. I always try my hardest to get to one that's sort of under the array and check that, make sure there's two screws on that too. Because usually if they're going to only use one screw, they're just going to be lazy. That's a lazy installer, and there's going to be other stuff you're going to find.
But that's only half a minute difference.
Yeah. Oh, hang on, what's a screw worth? About 12 cents, is it? Savings, it might be a little bit more than that. 80 cents? Saving 80 cents for every bracket. Come on, that's got to be worth it, doesn't it?
That's a new beer on Friday.
It sure is. But yeah, like, I understand they're trying to save time and they're trying to save money and all that sort of stuff. But that kind of stuff it's just lazy. There's no other way to explain it.
But hang on, I'm the installer now.
Yep.
And I go, this bloke paid $3,990 and he expects $40,000 worth of savings out of this system. Staff him.
Yeah. You know what? There's some installers that do have that mentality. They actually do have that mentality. But I can guarantee you, installers that work for the good companies are not going to be sort of thinking like that. They're going to be the ones who are going to be wanting to look after the customer, do a quality job, use the quality products, and look after the customer, because that's what we want to do. We want to look after them.
Now, let's say Fronius, it's a good inverter.
Yep.
Sungrow, it's a good inverter. Enphase, good inverter solution. Have you seen systems which actually use really good gear in the first place?
Yep.
But the install was still ballsed up?
Absolutely. I have seen that So this is sort of one of the things I mentioned before. I feel like the main variable is the installation quality. So I've seen poor quality products. I mean, you're seeing less and less of them now, but I've seen some maybe lower end products with a top-notch installation. I've seen that. It's pretty rare. It does happen though. It does happen. For me, that's the variable that makes all the difference. But yeah, certainly seen some really good quality or the good brands that you're going to pay the extra money for with some very poor workmanship. Certainly just because you're paying for a top-notch inverter, you're paying top dollar for the top-notch inverter, top-notch panels, doesn't mean you're going to get a good system. You still could have a really poor installation. Seen that a lot. Definitely seen that a lot.
I'm now using only one screw on the bracket because there's a tile on top, there's a panel on top, and you're never going to get to it.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Certainly be listing a defect for using one screw when two is required. You must use two screws on a tile roof.
Okay. So we'll just play this yes or no, or defect or not defect. So
sure.
Let's go for the next one.
Defect then. That one's defect.
Okay. I need to tie off all the cables under the panels, and I left my stainless steel ones behind, and I've got some nice white ones from the $2 shop, and they'll hold it up for a while. So is that okay? Or
No. Defect.
Oh, gee,
Straight away.
You're tough. Okay. I've actually got 2 end clamps I'm a bit short. And I just used some mid clamps on the back of the last panel because the mid clamps are still holding it down. So how's that?
First, I'd be asking, is it a universal? Is it a universal mid clamp end clamp?
No.
No, it's a defect.
Oh, Jesus Christ, you're a toughie. Wow. I have 2 rows of panels, and I've decided to not leave a gap between them because that way I can get them a bit tight, and it's a bit tight of a fit. So I haven't left an expansion gap, and I've butted them really tight, top row and bottom row.
Yep.
Could be a problem when they expand a bit, but are you smart enough to pick that up?
Yeah, so I'd be straight away asking manufacturer's instructions on that because I know that's... I believe there are some, though, that it's recommended. Some panels, it's recommended to only have a gap. So
meaning to have a gap.
Yes.
Yeah, because my logic is I've seen panel glass crack in a hot weather when the metal expanded and there was no way to go anywhere.
Yep.
So I would have thought that's a defect.
Yeah, so I'd be asking for the manufacturer's instructions on that product and them showing me that that's okay. Otherwise, if they can't, defect.
Wow. I need to get into the roof. I've got the cable. I just drill through the tile and I pull the cables through, and I've got this $4 packet of silicone and I stick it through, and it's under the panel, so there's never any kind of water going onto it. Should be okay, isn't it?
Okay. Again, so I'm going to issue a defect, but I will ask. I'll give him the benefit of the doubt here. I'll need them to prove to me that silicone is going to last the lifetime of the system. If they can't provide that evidence, defect.
Right. But I love silicone.
Well, then they send you a picture of a $2 tube of silicone from Bunnings. Of course, that's a defect. It's not going to last long.
Oh, damn it.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, the more smarter one. I'm walking around. I actually can't find a good spot for the inverter other than the northern wall, so the thing is going to bake away. But that's not your problem. That's the manufacturer's problem, who might have to do your warranty for nothing. But you're not going to defect me for that, are you?
I'll be defecting on that because I know most of them on the installation instructions. Again, that's an installation manufacturer's instructions. So, because there's actually no standard that says there's nothing in the Australian standards that says that you can't do that.
Right.
But there is something in the Australian standards that you must install your products as per manufacturer's instructions. Now, nearly all of them say you must not install them in direct sunlight or in a way like that. And so, again, I'll be asking the questions. Please show me in the manufacturer's instructions where it says you can do that, because if you can't, it's a defect.
But have you seen that in cheap solar systems?
Look, let's say there's a couple of inverter brands which have got pictures in their installation instructions, which, to be honest, it's hard to defect based on the picture. So, yeah, it does actually. See, it's one thing as an inspector seeing a defect and calling it out. Sometimes the hard thing could be proving it. So
you're saying you've seen some of the cheaper inverter manuals actually using the wrong installation in the photos where they show how to do it.
yeah. Well, look, I don't know if it's the wrong photo or not, or maybe just the manual hasn't been thought out that well. And those ones are on the market now. So I'm certainly not going to name names, but I think that potentially they need to have a look at their installation manual, because that product ain't going to last on a northern wall. And especially, I mean, you know, like anywhere in Australia, Victoria, you're like, you know, it can be, we usually get at least a few days of, you know, 42, 43 degrees. And there's multiple days over 30, 35. In the harsh western sun or northern sun, it ain't going to last. Ain't going to last.
But I didn't pay much for it, so who cares?
Doesn't matter, just replace it.
That's it. Now, I'm coming to a wall out of the roof, and it's a nice brick wall with a nice cavity in the middle.
Yep.
I'll just run my cable into the cavity. I mean, you haven't got a little camera looking into it.
Oh,
I
maybe I do.
think I need a conduit, but that's $2.50. I'm not going to spend that. I'll just throw the cable and I pick it up down the bottom again. What's that?
That's certainly a defect. Most
Jesus,
definitely.
You're a toughie.
Yeah, I am. I'm tough, aren't I?
What about the corrugated conduits that you can buy at Bunnings? They're not that good for the UV rated, but they make it easy to get around corners and this and that. What about that one?
Well, corrugated conduit. So you're talking about on a roof. You could use corrugated conduit on a roof, but again, you need to install products which are going to be fit for the environment they're going to be installed in. Now, I'd be asking for the installer to prove that that's going to last a lifetime of the system, because you can usually tell that cheap Bunnings type conduit shouldn't be using it in solar.
No.
Should be using proper solar UV rated conduit.
But they're more expensive.
Yeah, funny that, isn't it?
Okay.
Yeah.
Jesus, I mean, so far I haven't been able to pull anyone over you.
Yeah, I know. I've probably cost you about $50 in material as well.
Jesus,
Maybe 5 minutes.
you're an evil bastard.
Oh, I am.
So what's the one that you love giving a defect for because you'll be too stupid to do it that way?
The one I love giving it. I don't love giving any defects.
Oh, you keep on smiling.
Look, there's one that I can't stand. It seems to be quite minor. Maybe it's, I don't know, it's just a bit of OCD for me. But when the earth connection to the array, like I was talking before, there's an earth lug put on the rail. And then, so the panels and everything are all earth the way they should be. But then they don't put a cable tie before the connection, and they just string it tight. They string the earth cable tight between the connections. So tight that you could, like, yeah, I could just about play Stairway to Heaven on it. Like, it's, you could play a tune on it. So I can't stand that. And you're putting you're compromising the integrity of the whole earthing system by putting that connection under strain. And it takes like 2 seconds to put a cable tie to relieve the strain from that connection. Yeah. So, and a lot of the time it's only a minor defect, which gets issued. But I just don't understand why they do it.
From your experience, how important is it to have really good monitoring of your system?
Yeah. So we see this a bit if we go to sort of older systems, and they sort of say, "Oh well, we think it's working. We're not sure, but we got a really big bill." So that's when they find out the system's not working. Monitoring just fixes all of that. Like, there's some pretty good products out there now, which are pretty easy to install, and they're much cheaper than what they used to be. They're much more cost effective. So I can't see why you wouldn't monitor a system now. I just don't see why you
invest in that hardware.
Yeah, that's right. But I'm also seeing a lot of these, cheaper systems, they actually sell monitoring, and it's not set up. So,
what, the customer bought it but never got it?
Well, yeah, a lot of the time they said, I think I got monitoring. I'm not sure. And I go out and have a look, and I go, oh, well, you've got the USB dongle sitting underneath. Have you set it up yet? Have you gone on the QR code? Have you gone onto their website, whichever platform they might decide to do it? It's like, oh, no. I'm not sure. The installer didn't have time in the day. So I thought they were going to do it, and they said they might be back, but yeah, I haven't heard from them. See that a lot. That's one thing we see a lot. not set up, or not set up properly. So, because a lot of systems now do have monitoring on them.
Yeah.
I think they're sold with monitoring. It's very rare we see a system that doesn't have some sort of monitoring. But we don't see the other side of it. Like, I don't jump onto every single customer's app and see that you're getting the right numbers that you should be.
True, but I think some of the monitoring basically just tells you there's something coming out of it, but not a lot of the monitoring actually compares what should be coming out of the system at the size it is to what is coming out. So if you have underperforming system, if you have one string broken down or so, even if you have monitoring, if you don't know how to interpret it, you actually still have useless data.
That's right. And I've got a little bit of a theory as well. I don't know, we might need to cut this, I'm not sure. But I feel some of the monitoring, let's say from an inverter manufacturer, the ones that they set up on their own platform, I feel like sometimes they only give the data that they want to give to maybe makes their product look a bit better, or it may mean they can shirk warranties a little bit easier. I feel like that does happen a little bit, whereas you have other type of monitoring, which is like brand agnostic, like solar analytics type, those type of ones. They give you everything. They show you everything. So, I mean, I haven't done the comparison, having a look at what data you get out of solar analytics and then comparing it to what you might get out of the inverter manufacturer's monitoring. I don't know. I just feel like sometimes they're a little bit different, but that's
your theory.
Yeah, that's my theory. Okay, I can't prove that. What do you reckon about that? What do you think?
Well, I personally think that if you only get what your inverter produces, but you have no reference to what it should be producing, then you're only getting half the picture.
Yeah.
If you're then missing out on what your consumption is within the houses, then you're also half flying blind, because what you really should do is use as much of your solar in the middle of the day.
Yeah.
With timers, with sending it into the hot water, etc. So if you want to get the maximum benefit out of solar, having the appropriate monitoring that actually points you in the right direction of what you should do is really what's needed. And a lot of the material that's sitting on the inverter doesn't give you that full picture.
Yeah.
It only says, green light, I'm working, red light, I'm sleeping, and in between, the customer hasn't got a clue. That's my position.
So let's be controversial, right? Do they do that deliberately, do you think? Do you think inverter manufacturers maybe don't give the full picture deliberately?
No, I don't actually have that kind of perspective. But then again, I'm not an inspector. I don't look at the life like that.
Yeah.
I personally think that a lot of inverter manufacturers looking at what other products offer, and they try to match it so that they kind of be on an equal, not on an evil path. There was a Freudian slip. On an equal path.
Yeah.
So, the one thing I do have a bug about is that when very good inverters still have monitoring systems that look like they were designed in the 1950s, I think you're letting yourself down and your product if you don't really up to scratch. I mean, Tesla has really set the benchmark. It's a very nice app. It's easy to recognize. And I think everybody in the game has to lift their bar to give the end customer really good monitoring.
Yeah, from what I see, that seems like it could be a real easy win for inverter manufacturers.
Absolutely.
Or whoever in monitoring, just monitoring. Have a really good interface for your monitoring. Make sure it's easy to read. Works well as well. Gives you the right data. I feel like that's an easy win in this day and age. Gone are the days where we install the system and you're halfway out the driveway before you turn it on. You don't even do the anti-islanding test or anything like that, and you don't set up monitoring or anything like that.
No.
Now there's a bit to it, setting up, making sure the monitoring's right.
I mean, customers have to insist. If it's 5 to 6, when they finally finish the system, I still want to be a proper onboarding. I still want to explain how the monitoring is done. I want all my warranty documents. Preferably, if they are warranties that go longer when you log in, I want my installer to help me to do all of that, because a lot of the customers are 50, 60. You give them the Wi-Fi dongle and say, good luck, nothing's ever going to happen.
Yeah, and that's what we see. We do see that, installer hasn't set it up. Yeah, that's probably the other thing that's happened. The customer's just been given the dongle and gone, here you go, sort this out in the plastic bag with the with the warranty instructions and that sort of stuff.
Your grandkids can help.
Yeah, So we see that a lot too, you know, especially with the population that aren't quite as tech savvy. They're like, oh, I'm just waiting for my grandson to come over. He's good with these computer things. You know, he's got an app on his phone. He'll work it out. Yeah, but I feel like, it's an easy win monitoring.
Yeah. And advice to customer is if your company doesn't give you the proper monitoring and sets it up for you, then you've got a right to ask for it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Look, last chapter for today is really batteries and smart homes. What's your perspective about buying a battery nowadays?
So you're seeing more batteries coming out more and more. I don't know. I feel like we've been in this place for a while, probably the last 5 years, where everyone's sort of been saying, oh yeah, batteries, 2 years. Get them in 2 years, 2 years. I feel like now we're at a time where it's like, get them now. Get them now. Like that's what I feel like where we're at with it. Technology now seems to be like really safe if it's been installed well. Installers are knowing what the capabilities of these batteries are. They're well versed on how to install them safely, putting them in the right locations. You know, we've had AS5139 standard out for a few years now, so I think installers are getting used to it. And certainly seeing more of them, and I think it's just going to continue to grow with the way people's houses are looking. You just kind of, if you're building a house, you kind of really need a battery now, don't you? I think.
Look, my theory is that EVs will come.
Yep.
Most people who have a petrol car today, if they buy a new car in 5 years' time, they'll at least consider a hybrid.
Yeah.
Which means that the soul on the battery is really going to be the driver of a free petrol, so to speak.
Yeah.
Which means the R around a battery is going to be rather good.
That's right.
But if everybody in 4 or 5 years wants to suddenly have a battery prices will go up. Installation times will take 6 months, 9 months. They're going to have a backlog. So if you're smart, you buy it early in the curve because you're not going to be standing in line. That's my theory.
Yeah.
I don't know if you share it or not, but that's why I agree with you. Now is the right time to start looking at batteries.
Yeah, for sure. Like I think we've seen that, haven't we? Like there's been times in the past where there's been shortages of stock. I think like there's been times where there's been huge waits on Tesla Powerwalls and that sort of stuff.
6 months plus.
Yeah, that's right. Like I don't sell the stuff or install it or anything like that. I just hear from what a lot of the installers I speak to. They're sort of supply can be a really big issue, most definitely. Yeah, you're right with EVs as well. How many people now do you know who would go and buy an internal combustion engine car? Like if as your next car, wouldn't be too many, I wouldn't think. Still a few dinosaurs, I think, that can't get their head around the electric vehicle side of things. And actually, there's still people like me who want to drive an electric vehicle, but I sort of can't because of what I require it for. The technology. Well, I'm not saying the technology's not there, but we don't have the products in Australia yet. We don't have the vehicles for what I need.
So you need a heavy ute for long distances that carry and tows, is it?
I don't need to tow. Yeah, I need to carry a big ladder. I don't have that much gear, so I don't need to be able to carry. I don't need to haul that much in the back. But I need something a little bit better than what there is available at the moment.
So you're saying in the utility space, in the utes and four-wheel drives, large ones, the EV offering in Australia is still pretty thin.
There's nothing. There's I think you can get an LDV maybe for about 92 grand, something like that. Last time I looked. It's only two-wheel drive as well. And I don't know. I've just heard they're a bit clunky. I don't know. They just sort of, they're a bit like a internal combustion engine car that they put a battery in. That's what it's been explained to me as, and there's no real nice stuff in there. And at the moment I'm driving a 2020 Triton, so I bought that brand new. So I bought that it was on my son's 18th birthday. So it was the 5th of February.
Is that a VW or what's Triton?
Mitsubishi.
Mitsubishi. Okay.
Yeah,
Get your brands, Lambert.
Yeah, that's all right. Yeah, Mitsubishi Triton. So I bought that on the 5th of February, 2021. So I've had that now for, how long is that? 2.5 years, bit more. So I've done 115,000 Ks.
Wow, in 2.5 years.
Yeah, and you got to think, so there was probably 6 months of that. I was working at the CEC still, so only doing small trips for inspection. So basically in 2 years, I've done 100,000 Ks in 2 years. So I can do some long trips, and I don't mind stopping to charge. That's okay. I've got to stop for fuel. Even if I have to stop more frequently to charge, I don't care. No problems. I've got to stop. I've got to go to the toilet. I've got to, buy food, whatever it is. I need a rest. But at the moment, there's just nothing that will really carry the ladders I require on those longer distances. Maybe there'd be something for just being in and around town where it's a bit better. But for highway driving, I'm just waiting. I don't know. Maybe it's the F-150 Lightning. Maybe that's the one that's going to come out.
What about the Cybertruck?
Well, we're just waiting on the Cybertruck, aren't we? When's that coming out? Does anyone know when that's coming out?
I think 2 days after we land on Mars.
Are we going to send one of them into space as well? Yeah. Well, yeah. So I'll look. A Cybertruck would be okay as long as it can get a roof rack on it and all that sort of stuff. And I've got to be able to pay for it as well. But we'll work that out later.
So basically, you'd love to have an EV car that is suitable for your particular needs. And currently in Australia, there's zilch on the market.
Yeah, that's right. The only thing I've been on forums and asked about it. The only thing people have suggested is get a Tesla Model Y and put a roof rack on it. And I'm like, yeah, that's not safe. I'm carrying a big extension ladder. It's sort of 4 meters long when it's not extended. Can't do it.
Plus,
it's not safe.
You kind of would look a bit like a loser. I mean, seriously, who's putting the 4 meter ladder on a Tesla Y? You can't carry your latte and your ladder at the same time.
No, that's right. So I would love, yeah, exactly right. And, you want to be presenting a professional sort of, I want to be looking like a professional when I turn up. I don't want to be turning up in, you sometimes you see inspectors turn up in, like an old Commodore or something like that with just a fold-out ladder in the back or whatever. Like I try and make sure I've got all the right gear and I'm doing all the right things.
Yeah.
So that's, probably a Tesla Model Y with a roof rack on. It's probably not the right one.
Now, you know a bit about electricity and stuff, possibly quite a bit more than I do. What's the likelihood that we're going to see EVs one day plugging in to become the battery infrastructure and backup for the house? I know that the Australian standards don't support it at the moment, but is it a good idea?
From what I know about it, so you're talking about like vehicle to grid.
Yes.
Yeah. I really like the idea and I like the concept of it. I think it's a matter of time, isn't it, until it comes to Australia. I think it's only a matter of time. Look, I'm not 100% over all the safety concerns that may need to be overcome, but I can't see it being that hard. I think it's a really good idea. And yeah, we should move forward with it. It seems like a good way to stabilise the grid, to provide power when it's required. I can only see pluses with that.
But what about if you decided to run your aircon all night and the kids played PlayStation and you're trying to drive 100k in the morning and you're flat?
Well, you're not going anywhere then, are you? Yeah, look, there are those things to consider. There are those things to consider. But I think now a lot of the bits of kit which are installed, whether it's it's not just monitoring, it's changing load shifting and all that sort of stuff and trying to utilise the right tariffs. Surely we can get around that, can't we? And only use it when we're required to use it.
I'm sure there can be the software that says, okay, I want to have a buffer of 50% of my car battery that is preserved. And after that, you're not getting it out of my battery. I'm sure this is quite easy to install.
Yeah.
But it doesn't seem like it's driven really by a vision from our politicians.
Yeah. I really haven't heard politicians talk about it too much. I think it's the DNSPs that are pushing back a bit, isn't it? I think.
Well, who are the
DNS distributors like Ausgrid, City Power, or those type of.
Well, I mean, it takes away from their power and monopoly, doesn't it?
Well, it probably does. It probably does a little bit. We've had our challenges in the industry with them as well. I think they're more on board now than they have been with accepting solar.
Well, I don't think so. I mean, what gets me cranky is this. Solar has been going since 2004. The curve of solar has only gone one way, which is up. And the energy retailers have been sitting there all this time watching it export in the middle of the day. And now, 15 years later, they pull their hair out and say, oh, there's all this solar. What do we do with it? Why haven't they created some buckets, meaning some big batteries in the meantime? I mean, they could have foreseen this.
Yeah.
And now we're wasting this renewable energy going to nowhere because we don't have the infrastructure to handle it.
Yeah.
What's your position on that?
Well, I mean, as far as that goes, I don't understand why once solar penetration started getting a bit more sort of, where it is now, or even years before this, why didn't we have off-peak rates for hot water in the middle of the day? Like that seemed to me to be an easy win. I think there's still some night rates where you heat your hot water at night because it's the cheaper night rate. So that doesn't seem to be now the cheapest time to have power because, obviously the sun's out in the middle of the day. We should be harvesting it. Yeah, I think you're right. We should have put more batteries in, even on a utility scale. It's starting to happen a little bit now, but yeah, I think we're behind.
I just don't see the energy retailers really taking the opportunity that they could in driving us with innovative ideas to try to get out of the fossil fuel. They still seem to be wedded very much to their old model.
Well, they seem to be still making a lot of money off it. That's probably the reason why, isn't it?
I mean, did you pick up that the wholesale rate was 10 cents, then it went up to 23 cents? We all got the price rises.
Yeah.
But now it's back to 10, 11, but we're still paying the high price for electricity.
It doesn't make sense, does it? Doesn't make sense.
I mean, and the politicians seem to be not pushing them.
Yeah.
I got a theory there, which is probably one of my last for this interview, is that we will need to upgrade the grid as renewables come. The farms need the extension lines to come all the way into the city, etc. That's going to be a lot of money. And the government actually needs the energy retailers and the distributors on side because if they make the big profits now, the government can say, okay, well, some of that money, please invest back into the grid. So we let you have the all big profits first. Now we want to get something back. I have a feeling that's the only reason why the government's not kicking them in the butt for it, because we all suffer the cost of living crisis with the high electricity bills. They don't need to be so high, but nobody's pushing downwards.
Yeah, I know. It's complicated, isn't it? It's complicated.
Well, when it comes to politics, usually it's very easy. There's one horse that's riding, and that's called self-interest.
Yeah, that's right. They all want to do what they can to be elected the next time, don't they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so they blame the electricity retailers. They blame the electricity retailers for the higher prices. But as a government, they could actually say, hang on, you're back to the wholesale prices before the price rise.
Yeah.
Why aren't we getting the price reductions now?
Yeah.
I don't feel anybody is in the court of the end customer.
No, that's certainly not. They're certainly not. Well, there's no money to be made there then, is there? Isn't that what it is? It's all about money.
Anyway. All right. Well, look, it was very interesting. I must say I'm A, happy that I'm not an installer. Mm-hmm. I'm B, happy that you're not inspecting my system.
You'd be happy, as a customer?
No, as the installer, if I'm somebody who's trying to do it a bit quick and fast, I'm possibly not happy that you would come in. No. But as I'm going to come to the good bits, as a customer, having you come to my house and inspect the system and giving it the green light, I would think I would have had a local installer, somebody who had their own crew and cared for the system and cared for the after sale. And in that case, you would probably give me a pass.
That's true. That's true. Look, I would say, though, if you were a poor installer and you had me inspect your system, well, I'd want to work with you to bring you up to where you need to be. And I'd be willing to do that. I would be willing to do that. So hopefully that's a positive.
That's like the cop saying, I only gave you the $400 fine, so in the future you're not killing your family. Which is possibly not a bad thing.
I haven't thought of it that way. But yeah, thank you. Thanks, Marcus.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Please support the channel by liking the video, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell, and check out all our other videos. Want more energy answered? Visit yourenergyanswers.com for quality energy products, tools and calculators, and find your quality local installers. You're still here? I'll see you next time. Bye.